We've got ones that can see. Welcome, everybody, to today's show. I have to cover the fact that the New York Post and other mainstream media outlets are now covering the story of Noah's Ark actually being found. This is something I've talked about very early in my channel. And notice how the headline from the New York Post says new evidence supports myth of Noah's Ark as boat-shaped formation dates back to biblical floods. And I'm very suspicious as to why they're covering it, because this has already been uncovered. And I've talked about Ron Wyatt in the past. Ron Wyatt has discovered many of these things. He's discovered Noah's Ark. He's discovered where Sodom and Gomorrah took place, which is in a gated area of Saudi Arabia. The reason that these things are hidden from people is because if they showed it to you and they said, here's Noah's Ark, where it happened, suddenly, in the mind of an atheist or in the mind of an unbeliever, they would suddenly become believers because there would be proof of God's existence. You say, look, here's where the flood occurred, and Noah's Ark landed right here, and we have proof of it. They'd say, well, I guess I can't debate the Bible anymore. It appears to be true. But of course, we know that they've created evolution and they've created all of this nonsense so that they could discredit the Bible and turn normal people into completely brainwashed people into believing in completely ridiculous theories like evolution. And that's what they've done. That's why they've hidden these things from people. These are very important places. And Ron Wyatt discovered these things back in, I believe, the 90s and the 80s when he was researching this stuff. He was an archaeologist, and I'll show you some of the things that he has found. But first, let me read to you what they're actually saying about it. And keep in mind how they like to use terminology like, oh, the myth of Noah's Ark as a boat-shaped formation, right? A recent discovery has led some experts, and again, not such a recent discovery, has led experts to believe they found the fossil of Noah's Ark. Researchers have found that a boat-shaped mound, long believed by the faithful to be Noah's Ark, was most likely submerged underwater during a devastating flood some 5,000 years ago. The international team of experts has been working together since 2021 to study the Darupiner Formation, which they believe could be the site of a massive preserved vessel. The 538-foot geological structure composed of limonite, an ore of iron, is located approximately 20 miles south of Mount Ararat summit in Turkey near the Iranian border. This formation has interested experts for decades due to its ship-like shape and dimensions similar to the biblical description of Noah's Ark and Mount Ararat mentioned in religious texts. According to the Bible, the dimensions of the vessel were a length of 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits, mirroring those of the Darupiner Formation, and the Ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat. New findings have also shown that the formation was once submerged underwater, as soil samples containing traces of clay-like materials, marine deposits, and seafood remnants were dated back to a time when the biblical floods are said to have occurred between 3,500 and 5,000 years ago. The marine deposits and seafood remnants have pushed researchers to believe the area was once filled with water. Our studies show that this region harbored life in that period and that at some point it was covered by water, which reinforces the possibility that a catastrophic event of great magnitude occurred, the researcher stated. Previous research concluded that humans had likely been in the area, but the additional evidence of past floods in the region has encouraged those who believe this to be Noah's Ark. Various religious texts, including those touted by Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, all reference Noah and the Ark, but scientists have yet to determine the authenticity of the stories, which is why they put the myth in there, because I'm sure they'll eventually discredit this story. But this is truth that's out there for people that actually want to investigate it. So the reason for people out there, when we talk about these types of things, right? The discovery of Sodom and Gomorrah, the discovery of Noah's Ark, there's a reason, and it's also believed, many other things have been discovered. I talked about the Ark of the Covenant. I've talked about even some of the government operations that the CIA ran in regards to searching for and discovering the Ark of the Covenant. Now, everybody has their own beliefs about that, but they're all things that should be out there and discussed. And of course, even the Garden of Eden being out there and where it's actually located. But you'll never hear this out there. Why? Because it disproves science and proves God. That's the reason for it. Because again, if people were actually told, hey, this is where Sodom and Gomorrah took place. Well, for starters, you wouldn't see the world that we're currently living in, would you? Right? But see, they want the opposite of that. They want people to believe in science and make believe, and then tell everybody that what we really believe in is make believe, that science can't be discredited, but we can be discredited. Then on top of that, when you talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, you have a government that's brainwashing people through every single show and movie and celebrity into living that certain lifestyle, right? So that's not to their benefit, of course, and we know that they worship Satan, so why would it be to their benefit to prove God's existence? Satan wouldn't be able to build up an army, would he? So I want to play for you some of this from Ron Wyatt, because he's to credit with a lot of this, and Ron Wyatt never really gets credit. Now, some people out there don't agree. You don't have to agree with everything that I say or I show. That's not what this channel is, and you shouldn't agree with everything that everybody says, okay, in life in general, even your own wife or husband or boyfriend or girlfriend. You should take things, think for yourself, research things for yourself. So I know people out there, some don't credit Ron Wyatt and don't believe in some of the stuff that he may have talked about, and etc. But this is very interesting to know, because this is what they're talking about with the discovery of Noah's Ark, which has been known for quite some time, that they call a myth, which many of us actually believe is truth in plain sight, that they want hidden.
On June 20th, 1987, in the mountains of Ararat, Turkey officially recognized the discovery of Noah's Ark. Located on a mountainside about 15 miles south of the volcanic Mount Ararat, the remains of the massive ship were dedicated during a special ceremony. Guest of honor was Ron Wyatt, due to his 10 years of research at the site. The story began in 1957 during the Cold War, when aerial photos taken of eastern Turkey while searching for Soviet missile bases revealed a strange boat-shaped formation in the mountains about 6,300 feet above sea level. Life magazine reported on the story after an expedition from the United States went to the site in 1960. Blowing holes in the strange formation, the members of the team came away with the conclusion that there was nothing there of any archaeological interest. Ron Wyatt, like many others, read the story, but he was of the opinion that the site needed further exploration. There had been many claims of seeing Noah's Ark on the volcanic Mount Ararat, but Ron knew that it was a stratovolcano, and he believed that nothing would have been able to survive there. He noted the biblical account of the location of the ark. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. Urartu, the biblical Ararat, was a large region in eastern Turkey. This location was certainly feasible. But the factor that captured his interest the most was the length given in the Life magazine story, 500 feet. Most people were looking for a 437-foot Noah's Ark based on the Hebrew cubit, but Ron again went to the Bible to learn more. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. Moses was the author of the Genesis account of the flood. He would have known the cubit of the Egyptians. The Hebrew cubit didn't come into existence until there was a Hebrew nation after Moses' death. The Encyclopedia Britannica stated, "The Egyptian cubit is generally recognized as having been the most ubiquitous or universal standard of linear measurement in the very ancient world. The royal cubit equals 20.62 inches. This would mean Noah's Ark was much longer than 437 feet. 17 years after the Life magazine article, Ron finally made the journey to Turkey. When he saw the boat-shaped object, he saw that it looked just like it did in 1960, and he knew he would need permission to excavate in order to learn anything about what was beneath the surface. So he returned home and enlisted a number of friends to help him pray for an earthquake to reveal more. In late 1978, he learned of an earthquake in eastern Turkey and returned in August of 1979. When he arrived, he was overwhelmed by what he saw. The earthquake had dropped the soil around the object, and a large crack extended the entire length. He could see what looked to him like the remains of decayed rib timbers along the now exposed sides. Also, he was able to measure the depth of the debris and measure the length. It was 515 feet, or exactly 300 Royal Egyptian cubits. He was now convinced. He carefully combed the surface, looking for evidence that it was a shipwreck. He saw what he believed were petrified structures of an ancient ship whose deck had collapsed. He saw what looked like deck joists and deck support timbers. Of particular interest was the fact that the ship appeared to be impaled on a large outcropping of limestone. He concluded that this indicated that the ship had slid into the rock from another location. Before he made his first trip to Turkey, he had done an experiment in a nearby lake, building mountain configurations out of rocks and floating a boat model by them to see the reaction of the boat. He noted that a crescent shape caused the water to pull the boat into the crescent where the boat remained and gently floated. The present location did not fit with the results of that experiment, so Ron decided to examine the area above the boat shape. The site was in a moving mud flow, so he followed the mud flow up the mountainside. About 1.5 miles up, he found a crescent shape of mountains. He saw that the mud flow began up here. When he arrived near the top of the ridge, he found an ancient stele, like an ancient billboard, which depicted the boat shape, the familiar mountain ridge, several birds, and 8 faces within the boat shape. Clearly, this was a reference to the ship of Noah and its 8 survivors. He noticed a taller mountain peak on the stele that was no longer visible from that location. He concluded that it was a small volcano that had erupted long after Noah's Ark had landed, and that it had carried the ship down the mountainside about 1 mile, where it was impaled on the limestone outcropping, then covered in lava. The lava then encased the ship like a time capsule. The volcano then collapsed after expending its lava and was no longer visible. He then theorized that as the lava began to decay, water seeped in and allowed the remains to be petrified or fossilized by the process called mineral replacement. Molecule by molecule would be washed away from the remains and replaced by molecules from the objects and substances above it. As he examined the area within the crescent shape, he found a large section, 120 by 40 feet, approximately, of what appeared to be fossilized wood in the ground. He believed this to be the bottom of the ship, the original landing site. His conclusion was that when the floodwaters subsided, the ark sank into the muddy earth. This held the ship upright. Then God sent the wind to dry the face of the earth. The portion of the ship that sank into the mud was now firmly embedded in the ground. Many years later, when the lava carried the ship down the mountain, the main body of the ship was ripped loose. Only this section remained in their original location. Around this area that Ron believed to be embedded petrified wood, he found specimens of rock which looked very unique to him. He took several samples, along with several specimens from the boat shape below. Back home, he sent them for analysis. The results showed organic carbon, which indicated that the samples were consistent with decayed and fossilized wood. They also contained metals such as iron and aluminum. The analysis of the strange-looking rock Ron had found about 1.5 miles above the site by the bottom of the ship was clearly the most exciting. His initial analysis had shown it to be metals and not rock. In 1984, Ron met and became friends with Colonel Jim Irwin, the former astronaut. Colonel Irwin was searching for Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat, but he was very gracious and was interested in seeing the boat-shaped site. Ron had brought a metal detector to the site to see if there was a pattern of metal readings. In the presence of Colonel Irwin and others on his team, Ron employed the detectors. He found distinct metal lines down the entire length of the object, while no metal readings were obtained just outside of it. Ron asked Colonel Irwin, who had impressive scientific community connections, if he could have the strange specimen tested. Colonel Irwin sent the specimen to Los Alamos National Labs, where geophysicist John Baumgartner performed the analysis. The results of that analysis captured Dr. Baumgartner's interest. The specimen contained manganese, also titanium and aluminum, among others, and these were not in the form found in nature. Due to the sophistication of the metals, he questioned whether a missile had crashed on the mountainside, and Ron had found the remains. The exciting evidences of the metal lines and the analysis of the specimens brought two new researchers into the work, Dr. Baumgartner and David Fassel, the marine salvage expert who knew all about ships and their construction. They both joined the team.
Oh, look at that. Oh, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute, let me get a close-up of that. Kind of,
You want my hand in there for?
Yeah, just to point at those little flakes of iron that are coming out, like right there. There and there.
Huh.
That's a strong reading. Well,
I'd say that those frames right there.
okay. Keep walking. Do you want a measuring tape to measure these things, how far apart they are?
John, as a scientist, might I take the liberty here to ask you, do you really honestly believe that you have been on the remains of Noah's Ark?
I have no doubt in my mind. This has to be a man-made structure. It's full of metal. The metal has a regular pattern to it, and the size of the thing and the shape of the thing is such that it's almost certainly a large boat.
Dr. Baumgartner and Ron scanned the entire site with 3 different types of metal detectors. Placing rocks at each metal reading, they then attached tapes to show the lines. This exciting evidence also attracted the interest of ABC's 2020.
The boat-shaped site was first found and photographed by a Turkish army captain back in 1959. It was quickly explored and dismissed as a freak of nature. But Wyatt, an amateur archaeologist, rekindled interest in it a few years ago. He brought in Dave Fassel, a marine salvage expert, to assess it. The Doomsday Mountain team brought in some high technology to explore the oldest legend of man. They began scanning their site with a molecular frequency generator. It's a device used by surgeons to pinpoint cancer tumors, and it's been used by Fassel to locate underwater treasure. This time, the molecular frequency generator began to pick up a unique pattern of iron lines beneath the earth.
Okay, bring that one up.
They began placing ribbons along those lines. The finished shape, outlined by the ribbons, was that of a huge ship, the approximate length and width of Noah's Ark, as described in the Bible. The fascinating field of ribbons soon attracted higher academic interest.
That looks like iron. Okay.
Dr. John Baumgartner, a physicist with Los Alamos Laboratories, sent samples back to the lab for analysis and confirmed that the metal they were tracing with the ribbons was indeed iron. With the width and the length known, the only remaining question was depth. By locating the depth of the hull, they could determine if the boat-shaped object had the cargo capacity described in the biblical ark. To resolve this final issue, Wyatt and Fassel brought geologist Tom Finner to Turkey with his company's heavy-duty subsurface radar equipment. Gear like this located the black box cockpit recorder on the floor of the frozen Potomac River after the Air Florida crash. It was here, several miles short of the boat-shaped site, that a waiting game began for Finner and the others. The party needed a final go-ahead from the Turkish government to complete their probe of Doomsday Mountain. The restrictions of martial law left the American explorers isolated from the outside world. Not even a telephone.
Anyway, we're going to hang in like smell on a skunk till there's nothing left to get this done.
Hanging like the smell on a skunk. The Turkish government stopped the exploration. What now?
Since we were there, Barbara, things have cooled down, and they've sent their own team of scientists in to take a look at this site. It's a very fascinating location.
While Turkish scientists and archaeologists did their own research, Ron and his associates continued their work. The next step was subsurface interface radar.
There's the longitudinal bulkhead. You ought to see them popping out, man.
Yeah, there they are.
Here. There's
Yeah.
another one. There's the key line right there.
Yeah.
Oh, Ron, the lines are there. The lines are there.
Okay, we're going to walk over,
Yeah, let's walk.
take a look.
Leave it running so everybody knows that we're not cheating here, right?
You got it, Toby.
Okay. Now, this is the west bulkhead. Okay, can you look through there? And
All right,
this is the west bulkhead.
all right.
That was over there. And he walked easterly. Here we start getting the longitudinal bulkheads. Here, 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 here.
Okay.
Here. You see there how it shows up?
All right.
The initial scans were very impressive, showing internal structure consistent with bulkheads and rooms. But to be sure they were interpreting the data correctly, Ron took the scan printouts to Geophysical Survey Systems, the developer and manufacturer of the radar.
This data does not represent natural geology. It's a man-made structure. These reflections are occurring very periodic, too periodic to be random natural type interface.
There was no longer any doubt that this was the remains of something man-made. In late 1986, the Turks announced their decision. The ceremony was set for June 1987. During that ceremony, the governor asked Ron to demonstrate the radar on site for the journalists and military officials. When Ron showed them a readout that he said looked like an intact timber, the governor then instructed a soldier to dig right there. What emerged was this petrified section of fossilized hand-wrought timber. Sectioning showed it to be laminated wood, 5 layers of timber glued together with pitch, clearly visible oozing from the end. This fossilized specimen shows that rivets were used in its construction. Their analysis showed that they contained iron, titanium, and aluminum, among other things, very sophisticated alloys that would be resistant to water. Specimens falling out from the lower end of the ship, identified as slag by an expert in metallurgy, indicated to Ron that Noah filled the hull with slag material from his metal production of the fittings used to build the ark. More complete radar scans revealed a ship, although damaged and collapsed in places, of very intelligent, modern design with a ramp system at the door which led to each level. In 1990, Ron performed what he called a mini-excavation, where he took shovels and bent the blades into a giant razor. He and his associates then shaved off a very thin layer from one section, smoothing it to show the color difference between the structure members and the matrix. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world, and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be.
So that's Ron Wyatt's discovery that's now being discussed today. And again, as I emphasized earlier in the video, if you are somebody who is still listening, think about the benefits of telling a society that all these things in the Bible, right? Because you want people to go, well, where's the proof? They expect God to fly down in front of them and visit them in the night and things like that. Well, there's proof in the locations of these events. They're around the earth, right? There's proof in that. They never talk like that, do they? Do you ever hear the media talk about that stuff? They pretend like, oh, son, well, that happened in some place we can, I don't know. It's make-believe, you know? Because if they admit the existence of these locations, they're admitting to the existence of God. And they're admitting that everything that they've taught people in the public, in all the school systems, let's be real, about evolution is bullcrap that they invented to lead people away from God and, of course, to build up Satan's army. So I just wanted to cover that. Mainstream media outlets are talking about it, which is rare, but once in a blue moon, we do see truth in plain sight. But remember, they put words like it supports the myth on the articles for a reason, so that people still end up seeing it and then go, yeah, I don't know, that doesn't seem, it doesn't seem legit, right? Because they've been trained to think otherwise. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.